Check, check.
How's it
Check,
going,
1,
guys?
2. Hey, what's up, Andy?
So this is your first ever podcast appearance.
It is, indeed.
What an honor.
Well, first published podcast.
Oh, that's right. You were
Yeah.
telling me.
Some that are
about
still
the,
on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Lost to time.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
All right. So we're here with Zack and Adam Hall, the Hall brothers. I've been meaning to get you guys on a podcast for a long time, and we're finally doing it.
Yeah, we are.
We are here in Ketchum, Idaho, right next door to Sun Valley, Idaho. And any minute now, the power in the entire town, the entire region, is going to go out, which is a first-time thing for me.
It's a forced
A
blackout.
forced blackout. And
We don't know what for.
why.
We're here for a gig tomorrow in Sun Valley. And we arrived to the news that they are scheduling a citywide power outage tonight. So I figured we would do a podcast until the power runs out.
Hope we can get it in under the wire.
Yeah, and even if it goes out in the middle, I think I should still be good here on the laptop with the battery. So
Perfect. Let's do it.
yeah. So like I said, we're in Idaho. I drove up from Los Angeles yesterday and stayed in the middle of nowhere in northern Nevada. And you guys flew in today.
Yep, sure did.
Flew into Boise and drove the rest of the way to Sun Valley. And so I thought it'd be a perfect topic to talk to you guys about flying with instruments or flying to a gig in general, because I know you guys do that a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we do that quite a bit. There are several things to talk about. I would like to start by saying I think it's worth it for any musician that's starting to travel a lot via airplane for gigs to go ahead and spend the money and get the TSA pre-check. It saves you a lot of time in the airport. And I think the last I checked, it was like $85 and it lasts for 5 years. So if you fly with any frequency, even if you're not a musician and you happen to be listening to this podcast, it saves you so much time in the airport and you don't have to take your shoes off in the security line. And if you think about that over 5 years, it's really a minimal investment and saves you a lot of hassle and a lot of time. A lot of less stress of like getting to the airport and being like, oh no, the security line is
Out the door.
crazy
at
long,
LAX.
and I'm never going to make my flight.
Yeah, I second that. I've had pre-check for, I guess, 6 years now because I've had to renew it now once. And every time I go to the airport and I see the line of regular people,
Suckers.
I just kind of laugh to myself and I'm like, man, those were the days, you know? But yeah, pre-check, you just sort of breeze right through.
Yeah, I really love that, and it's definitely worth not just the money, but the small amount of effort you have to do to get approved for that. It's totally worth it. Recommend it to everyone.
Yeah. And so what about flying with, well, let's start with kind of your guys' history with gigging and with when did flying start to come into it? I know you guys are like serious road dogs. You tour a lot. You play all the time. So tell me like about who you're touring with, when did you get started, and kind of how you got into the long haul game.
Yeah, well, we definitely after we had moved to LA and we're trying to, get gigs that we could afford to live and make a living at it. One of the first touring ones we had was Jason Charles Miller, and we did a lot of van tours with him.
Yeah, that was definitely the start of the getting used to the travel thing, is like, the classic 15-passenger van with a trailer kind of thing. Very, very low, production, like you're not going, you route the tour so that it makes sense. You're not like flying to different places just so you can make it work with everybody in a van. So that's kind of how it started. And we did that for a while, for a few years.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been various other bands too. But I think the first time I started flying for gigs was when I got the Billy Ray Cyrus gig, and he wasn't doing like a full blown. We're on the road for a month or even a week. It was just fly out days.
Just one off.
They were all one-offs.
Yeah.
And so that's when I first started flying. And actually that experience flying was a lot different than what I do now, because there was budget to like check everything.
Oh yeah.
And, now I try to keep my check bags within if I'm flying Southwest, it's a 2-bag check minimum before you have to start paying.
The other airlines, you already have to start from your first check one.
Which brings me to another point. I like Southwest a lot for if they fly to where you're going, from where you're going, because I think they're super musician friendly, and they've never given me guff about carrying an instrument on to the plane.
That's
to
how
put
you
in the
guys
overhead.
got here today.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that they're kind of just very amenable to having musical instruments on the plane, and you just put them in the overhead compartment. And one thing I will say about that is, if you're not going the road case, the flight case route, like the big fiberglass cases and all those things, which are great, that's kind of if you just want to be the, go ahead and check your guitar or whatever, and just get it at baggage claim. But obviously that, takes your instrument out of your hands, and you don't know what's going to happen. And we've all heard countless horror stories and stuff. But
it's a scary proposition.
But I mean, it's still a necessary thing a lot of times to have to do it that way. But if you are fortunate enough to bring it on the plane, definitely like invest in a quality padded gig bag. Like don't get the Fender one that Guitar Center gave you with your Strat or whatever.
Yeah.
Like get a good one.
Yeah. I feel like, you always see like the sticker that says fragile. I feel like if a airport worker sees that, to them it means let's just like throw this thing.
I think it's almost a dare.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of counterintuitive to actually taking care of your instruments, but that's good to know. So Southwest, this podcast is brought to you by Southwest.
Hopefully
Airlines.
one day they will sponsor all of us.
But because I have heard a lot of stories about guitars getting dinged up, and I had I like posed this question a few years ago. It's like the first time I was flying to a gig, and I asked somebody, and their advice was don't ever fly with your best instrument.
Totally.
I think that's great advice.
Which was good. It's like if you have a backup guitar or whatever, just get through the gig with that.
Yeah, and I know so many people that are musicians are so partial to whatever their favorite guitar or whatever instrument it might be is, but at the end of the day, it's just one tour or one gig, and it's a live sound situation. Like you're not in the recording studio.
Yeah.
You don't need to bring your, pre-war Martin on the plane.
The risk level is high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and then sort of on that point is you also need to consider like what role you are in the band. Like if you're playing something that's more like a slab of wood, like a P bass or a Telecaster kind of thing, like the odds of that getting broken are a lot less, and then that you might be more willing to check versus, I don't know, like a really nice mandolin or fiddle or something. Those are way more fragile. So that's another thing to think about is acoustic versus electric and checking versus carrying on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did feel like we kind of got sidetracked. I think that the gig that Zach and I have done the absolute most flying with has been with this guy, Mark McKay, who's a Nashville artist. He's an up-and-comer, but you can stream all of his stuff. Check him out, Mark McKay. And we have done so many fly dates with that guy. One of the things that we've done with that band is really streamline the entire band to be able to fly with stuff and run our own live sound rig where we check a road case that has all the mixer unit with all the inputs,
the wireless,
and like a rack mounted thing with the
in-ears.
And then we all use in-ears, so we you don't have to worry about amps, which means you also don't have to backline amps where at the gig, and you can control your own mix through the iPhone. Everybody's iPhone can log onto the router and we can all control our own mix and our
Everything's
in-ears.
DI?
Everything is DI.
Okay.
Like if you're on stage and don't have your ears in, the only thing you can hear is the drums.
Yeah.
So that's been a process that's evolved over the years of touring with him, of, you know, going into different places with different levels of sound crews and stuff. And we just decided, okay, how do we do this where it's all in-house? All we need is an XLR to the mains, a stereo XLR to the mains, and then we can run our own ears.
Yeah. And then what about like effects? So you check a pedal board. I mean, some people have like a nice flight case, road case type of thing for their
Yeah,
pedals.
that's totally a good option. And that's like, you know, I guess it depends on how many effects you need to use on that gig. I like to strip it down as much as I possibly can, so I'm bringing the least amount of stuff. I've definitely checked, you know, pedal boards before, but, you know, a lot of the guys we've been playing with, especially electric guitar players, have been using the Line 6 stuff these days is so good and so
All in
compact that you can just put that in your roller bag or whatever.
Yeah.
And you've got an entire pedal board and amp simulator software stuff built into the pedal. So yeah, I mean, to me, that all goes along with just like, how can you make your rig as compact as possible? And, you know, if you're playing acoustic instruments, you know, if you bring a decent DI and maybe a couple pedals, like that stuff's easy to put in your roller bag. That'll even fit overhead on the plane, you know?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I did a couple of shows with the Brevet in Miami. It was, obviously, we flew from Los Angeles, and I bought a, you know, like a 12-inch long pedal board. It's like a little mini pedal board with the, you know, Velcroed it and everything. And I just put on there like overdrive, a tuner, a delay, and I was playing bass, so I didn't even need all of that. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I just put a couple, and those pedals were like the miniature pedals too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was very tiny.
Those are
and
good.
I was able to get that in my overhead bag, so I didn't have to worry about that. And luckily, everything else was backline, including the bass that I played.
Oh,
Nice.
So that was a pretty easy one. But I always get nervous if I am in a situation where I need to bring a guitar, because it's the sort of size where you can't always count on getting in an overhead, like an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't, you know, unless you have the right case, you don't want to like just check it or gate check it or, you know, whatever, plane side. And occasionally there'll be like a coat closet in the plane or something where they can put in instruments like that.
Yeah, you can get lucky with that for sure.
But I'll say this, I feel like those are dwindling. Like those
Yeah.
used to be more
Yeah.
present on
It's
planes than
taking
they
up
are
seat
these
space
days.
now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Dollars and cents.
yeah. So I guess so you brought a banjo with you.
I flew with a
today
banjo
on the
today,
plane.
and yeah, I just, like he was saying, invest in a quality gig bag. I have a gig bag that's really sturdy and well padded, and I just always just wear it on my back onto the plane and put it overhead. And I've never been made to check it once, which
Okay.
fingers crossed will continue.
There is one crucial piece of the puzzle to that, though, and that's getting
yeah. I think I
like
know where
more
you're
of a
going.
priority boarding, so that you can, you know, there's tons of open,
Yeah.
you know, ones. And you're like, well, this one's going.
Yeah.
in
If
that
you're in
one.
the, you know, C to F boarding groups or whatever it might be,
It's gonna be hard.
Even when you're walking on, they might be telling you, yeah, that's definitely not going to fit. We're going to have to gate check it.
Yeah, I was flying to like the Boston area with the Get Down Boys, and we had a couple of guitars, and it was like around the holiday time, or maybe it was just in the winter, and therefore people had more stuff. But we were not the first ones on the plane, and we get on the plane, and all the overheads are completely jammed. So I guess I should say I did not have a guitar in my case. We were flying there to play at a festival, Joe Val Bluegrass Festival.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And I was going to buy my Rockbridge, my guitar.
Oh, cool.
I bought it on that trip. So I had, you know, worked it out beforehand that I was going to meet this guy, Matt Arcara. That's a whole other story. But so I flew with an empty guitar case. One of my bandmates flew with a guitar in his guitar case. They lost both guitar cases.
Oh, wow.
and some other thing. You know, they were lost for a few days, and we had to go back to pick them up at the airport a few days later. And when we got to the airport and we get to the little office where they have like lost luggage and stuff, the guy says, here's your stuff. And I opened my guitar case, which was empty, and I went, hey, what the hell, man? What are you doing? And he's like freaked out a little bit.
Nice.
Explained to him what was going on. But that always makes me nervous, man, because it's not like a sure thing. At least maybe you're telling me it is, but.
No, I mean, we've flown in on the day of a gig and like have guitars not be there and have to scramble to borrow one and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's always the, if it, you have to check any of your instruments, there's always a risk that they might misplace it.
Yeah.
Hopefully temporarily, but.
Yeah.
And not break it.
And not break it.
One of the things we did for this trip was I decided to drive so that I could bring all the gear we would need. PA, everything, amps, and the upright bass. So that's a nice little trick if you can do that, which you can't always do that if everybody's flying together somewhere or if you're going out of the country or something. Can't always do that, but you do have a flight case for your upright bass.
I do. It's been on loan to me for over a year now.
Okay.
Because it's so huge that
yeah,
I don't think the guy wants it back in his living room, so it lives in my living room now.
It's enormous. I've seen it.
It can fit a human for sure.
It is huge.
Easily.
It might could fit a couple of humans.
Yeah, actually,
they can fit one bass.
So would you have to pay extra to ship that?
You do. You do have to pay like oversized luggage for that. But I mean, even as big as it is, like it's the same price as if your bag was too heavy or whatever. I mean, just like a normal oversized thing. We have had some adventures trying to get that thing checked and things like that. But
I mean, they can't put that on the conveyor belt to go out through the.
They got to wheel it out.
Well, then the thing is, even if you're flying somewhere with the bass in a flight case, because it makes, instead of the bass being in a bag or whatever, it makes it so much bigger. Then you have to fit that in whatever ground travel you have.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If the bass does make it, you're not over
you gotta
the hump
yet. Or something like that.
Exactly. Well, you could if you're coming back through the same airport, you could like stash it with a friend or somebody, the flight case, and then
right.
That would make it a little easier. But there's still no good answer to travel with a upright bass.
Yeah.
But it's still better than renting a different bass in every town you're in, which I've also done. And you're scrambling, and the amount of time you have to get all the connections and organize everything is.
Yeah, then it's not set up the way you like it.
Yeah, and it's also costs.
It costs more than the bag fee each way because if you're doing a multi-city tour that you had to fly in to get to. Yeah, you got to do that in every town, and
it's tough.
Definitely more expensive than just paying the oversized fee.
So, any horror stories with flying to a gig?
Well, luckily they haven't broken any of our stuff yet, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, this is bad advice, but I'll go ahead and tell you. When we play with Mark McKay, I have a beater acoustic guitar that I just put in a regular acoustic guitar case and check, and it's never broken. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, for real.
To anyone, but I've been doing that for a while and it's worked out so far. But I wouldn't do it if it were a valuable instrument at all.
Yeah,
I mean, I've definitely had to gate check my like an electric bass in a gig bag before, but goes back to the quality gig bag thing, and luckily it
also what you said about like a Fender P bass, it's a slab of wood.
Yeah,
it's less likely to break than an acoustic instrument really of
one
sort.
Little, this is not a horror story, but just thinking about gate checking and all that stuff, one little trick that I learned from our buddy Jeff Marshall, who learned it from a guy Rick Fiorabracci, is that if you are bringing your guitar on board and hoping to put it in the overhead compartments, one hack, I guess.
Yeah, let's call it a hack.
Is if you turn your gig bag upside down so that they don't see the guitar neck sticking above your head.
That's good.
Then they just kind of think it's a backpack because they,
because they're stupid.
But I've definitely used that, and nobody's noticed
that's
or
great. I like
said
that.
anything. So that's a cool trick.
That's a good tip. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers the bases, you know. Keep if you're going to check an instrument, get a flight case that you trust that it will not break in. Unlike my previous advice about just checking a regular guitar case.
Don't put a fragile
don't do
sticker
that.
on it.
Right.
Yeah, keep your rig as compact as you can do and still get the sounds you need to get for a live gig, you know.
All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Andy.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
You know, can you guys say the send out for the podcast, which is just have a great gig?
Have a great gig.